Stop seeing this if you still believe the problem is technology. Stop seeing if you think young people are lazy by nature. Stop seeing if you still convince yourself that everything will improve with more emotional education, more therapy, or more understanding. Because what I'm going to tell you, you're not going to like. What I'm going to show you is something we all know, but no one dares to name out loud. We have created the weakest generation in history, and it wasn't by accident. It was a meticulous, calculated construction, a social engineering that confused protection with love and comfort with well-being. And the worst of all is that we did it with the best intentions. Every parent who prevented their child from falling, every teacher who eliminated failure from their vocabulary, every boss who softened feedback to avoid hurting sensibilities, all of them participated in the construction of something monstrous, human beings incapable of bearing the weight of real life. But here's what no one tells you. This is not a generational accident. It's the logical result of a perverse philosophy that decided suffering was the enemy, that frustration was toxic, that failure was trauma. We eliminated friction from existence and created something much worse than pain. We created the inability to process it. Because pain always comes, it has always come, and it will always come. The difference is that before it forged character, now it destroys identities. Before we prepared warriors, now we manufacture professional victims. And I'm not talking about romantic metaphors or cheap motivational speeches. I'm talking about something much deeper, something philosophers have been warning about for centuries, but that we've decided to ignore because the truth hurts more than the comfortable lie. Nassim Nicholas Taleb called it anti-fragile, that capacity to not only resist chaos, but to strengthen with it. But we went in the opposite direction. We built the fragile, the brittle, what breaks with the first blow. And we did it in the name of love, in the name of protection, in the name of a better future that will never arrive because we eliminated the conditions that make it possible. You know what happens when you never let someone fail? They don't learn. You know what happens when you never allow someone to wait? They become addicted to immediacy. You know what happens when you eliminate all criticism from their life? You create a narcissistic monster incapable of seeing themselves clearly. And now we live in a world full of them. Adults with 30-year-old bodies and 5-year-old emotional minds, incapable of sustaining a difficult conversation, incapable of accepting a no, incapable of building something that requires more than 3 months of effort without visible reward. Think about this for a second. Think about how many times you've seen someone emotionally collapse over something that 50 years ago would have been considered a simple discomfort. Constructive criticism becomes a personal attack. A 2-day wait transforms into unbearable anxiety. A disagreement is interpreted as emotional violence. What the hell happened? When did we become so pathetically weak? And before you jump to defend the indefensible, before you tell me it's empathy, that it's sensitivity, that it's social evolution, let me tell you something. What you call empathy is disguised cowardice. What you call sensitivity is inability to regulate emotions. What you call evolution is involution disguised as progress. The human being was designed to resist, to adapt, to grow under pressure. Everything in our biology, in our psychology, in our evolutionary history prepared us to face the unpredictable. And suddenly, in less than 50 years, we decided all that was wrong. We decided the child shouldn't fall, that the adolescent shouldn't fail, that the adult shouldn't face real consequences for their decisions. We built a world of emotional cushions where every blow is cushioned, every fall is justified, every failure is reinterpreted as learning without consequences. And the result is not a happier society, it's a more miserable society, more anxious, more depressed than ever in documented human history. You want to know why? Because we eliminated emotional muscle. Just as a body that never carries weight atrophies, a mind that never faces adversity weakens to the point of collapse. And now we have entire generations collapsing under the weight of problems that were previously considered trivial. The paradox is brutal. The more comfortable we made life, the more unbearable it became. The more we protected from the difficult, the more incapable they became of handling the inevitable. And the inevitable always comes. Death comes, rejection comes, failure comes, disillusionment comes, betrayal comes, pain comes. And when it comes, these overprotected individuals, these products of comfort's social engineering, collapse like paper structures under the rain. But here's what's truly disturbing. It's not just about emotional weakness. It's about something much deeper and more dangerous. It's about the death of critical thinking. Because when you eliminate the capacity to bear discomfort, you also eliminate the capacity to question. Deep thinking is uncomfortable. Truth is uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. And a generation that flees from discomfort is a generation that flees from truth. That's why we see what we see. Adults incapable of maintaining a conversation with someone who thinks differently, universities that have become intellectual daycare centers, workspaces where telling the truth is considered aggression. We've confused protection with censorship, emotional security with thought control. And the result is a society where stupidity is not only tolerated, it's celebrated. And here comes the part that really hurts, the part no one wants to admit. This was a choice. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an unexpected consequence. It was a deliberate decision by a society that decided comfort was more important than character, that validation was more important than truth, that feeling good was more important than being good. Every time a parent decided to do their child's homework so they wouldn't get frustrated, they made that decision. Every time a teacher eliminated grades so no one would feel bad, they made that decision. Every time a company decided it was better not to give honest feedback to avoid conflicts, they made that decision. And now we live with the consequences. But this is not just a problem with young people. This is not just a generational problem. This is a systemic problem that has infected every level of our society. Because the adults who raised these young people were also raised in early versions of this philosophy. The difference is that they still had some friction in their lives. They still faced some resistance. But with each generation, we eliminated more and more of that resistance until we reached the point where we are now. A society where fragility is not the exception, it's the norm. Where emotional collapse is not a rare event, it's a daily occurrence. Where the inability to function under pressure is not an individual weakness, it's a generational characteristic. And if you think I'm exaggerating, look at yourself in the mirror. How many times have you avoided a difficult conversation because it seemed too uncomfortable? How many times have you preferred the comfortable lie over the painful truth? How many times have you chosen instant validation over hard, slow work? We are all part of this. We have all contributed to building this prison of comfort that we call progress. The question is not whether we are part of the problem. The question is whether we have the courage to admit it and do something about it. Because here's the brutal reality. This will only get worse. Every year that passes, every new generation we raise under this philosophy of institutionalized fragility, every new system we implement to eliminate discomfort, takes us further from what human beings need to thrive. Life is not comfortable. Life is not fair. Life owes you nothing. And the sooner we accept that, the sooner we stop protecting people from necessary pain, the sooner we understand that suffering is not the enemy but the most honest teacher we have, the faster we can start rebuilding what we've destroyed. Because this is not irreversible. Fragility is cured with exposure. Weakness is transformed with resistance. Stupidity is combated with brutal and unapologetic critical thinking. But it requires something this society has forgotten. It requires courage. The courage to let someone fail. The courage to tell the truth even if it hurts. The courage to face chaos without looking for a cushion to soften every blow. And if what I just said bothered you, if you feel it's too harsh, if you think I'm being unfair or cruel, perfect. That discomfort you're feeling right now is exactly what you've been avoiding your whole life. That's the friction you need. That's the pain that makes you grow. And if you can't bear a few words in a video, how do you expect to bear the real blows of existence? The answer is simple. You can't. And that is precisely the problem we're going to destroy in the next few minutes. Because this is not a video to make you feel good. This is a video to wake you up. And waking up hurts. But it's the only thing that can save you from the self-imposed mediocrity you live in. Now let me take you deeper. Let me show you how we got exactly to this point of no return. Because understanding the problem is the first step to dismantling the machine that has turned us into what we are. And what we are is not pretty. What we are is the result of decades of social engineering disguised as humanism, of educational policies designed by people who confused equality with mediocrity, of a corporate culture that decided emotional productivity was more important than real productivity. Each piece of this puzzle was placed deliberately, and each one contributed to building the cage where we are now trapped. Let's start with education, because that's where it all begins. It's in classrooms where character is forged, or where it's destroyed. And we've chosen the latter. Schools are no longer places of learning, they're validation centers. Teachers no longer teach, they manage emotions. Grades no longer reflect competence, they reflect participation. We've eliminated failure from the educational system as if it were a contagious disease, when in reality failure is the only mechanism nature designed to teach us what works and what doesn't. When a child fails an exam, and we pass them anyway so they don't feel bad, we're not protecting them, we're condemning them. We're teaching them that effort doesn't matter, that results are negotiable, that reality can be ignored if we scream loudly enough about our feelings. And then we're surprised when that same child becomes an adult who collapses at the first real evaluation of their life. We're surprised when they can't keep a job because they never learned that the boss isn't there to validate their emotions. We're surprised when they abandon projects halfway through because they never developed the mental endurance to persist when things get difficult. But we shouldn't be surprised. We designed it that way. We deliberately eliminated all the negative feedback mechanisms that life uses to correct us, and then we expect them to magically know how to navigate a world that doesn't work according to daycare rules. University is even worse. That's where fragility becomes institutionalized. Safe spaces, trigger warnings, microaggression policies, all designed under the premise that students are so fragile that a contrary idea can destroy them. Do you realize how absurd that is? University used to be the place where you went to have your ideas challenged, where you faced thoughts that contradicted everything you believed, where you learned to defend your positions or change them when you found better arguments. Now it's a refuge for eternal adolescents who need protection from anything that shakes their fragile sense of identity. And professors are complicit. Not all, but most. Because it's easier to give in than to resist. It's easier to pass everyone than to deal with complaints. It's easier to soften content than to face accusations of insensitivity. So they do it. They lower standards year after year, eliminate difficult texts, avoid controversial topics, turn higher education into an expensive extension of daycare. And students come out of there without having been intellectually challenged once, convinced they know something when in reality they've only been trained to repeat the correct answers on life's multiple-choice exam. But education is only part of the problem. The other part is at home, in the way we've raised our children for the last 3 decades. Because there was a fundamental shift in parenting philosophy, a shift so subtle that almost no one noticed when it was happening. We went from raising children to managing their happiness. And those two things are not the same. Raising a child means preparing them for life. It means gradually exposing them to increasing levels of difficulty so they develop the mental and emotional tools necessary to function independently. Managing their happiness means eliminating everything that might cause them temporary discomfort, means becoming a shield between them and any negative experience. And we've chosen the latter. Helicopter parents are not an exaggeration, they're the norm. Parents who do their children's homework, who call teachers to complain about grades, who negotiate with sports coaches so their children have more playing time, who solve all their social conflicts, who give them everything they ask for to avoid tantrums. And what do these children learn? They learn that the world revolves around them. They learn they don't have to make an effort because someone will always do it for them. They learn that discomfort is optional. And then they become adults who expect the same from the world. And the world destroys them because it doesn't work that way. Technology amplified all this. It didn't cause it, but it accelerated it. Social media created a system of instant validation where every thought can be shared and every emotion can be validated by strangers in seconds. And that trained the brain to need that constant dopamine hit that comes from likes, comments, shares. We created approval addicts, people whose sense of worth is determined by digital metrics designed by algorithms that have no interest in their well-being, only in keeping them hooked as long as possible. And here's what's really perverse. Social media didn't just create addiction to validation, it also created the illusion that everyone lives perfect lives. Each person shows only their best moments, their achievements, their carefully curated experiences. And everyone else compares their complete realities with those edited versions of others' lives. The result is a generation that feels inadequate all the time, that believes everyone else has something they don't have, that lives in a perpetual state of toxic comparison. And when the comparison isn't favorable, instead of using it as motivation to improve, they use it as an excuse to give up. Because that's another characteristic of fragility, the inability to convert adversity into fuel. Resilient people look at others' success and ask what they can learn from it. Fragile people look at it and convince themselves the system is against them, that they were lucky, that they cheated. It's easier to blame the system than to accept that maybe they're not doing enough. It's more comfortable to be a victim than to be responsible. And modern society doesn't just allow that victim mentality, it celebrates it. There's an entire industry built around telling people it's not their fault, that they're victims of circumstances, that they deserve things without having to earn them. The self-esteem movement made everything worse. It will sound contradictory, but hear me out. Self-esteem used to be something you earned, something you developed through real achievements, through overcoming genuine challenges. Now it's something you're supposed to have unconditionally, something others should give you without you doing anything to deserve it. participation trophies for everyone, praise for existing, validation for trying even if you achieve nothing. And the result is a generation with artificially inflated self-esteem that collapses at first contact with reality. Because reality doesn't give participation trophies. Reality rewards results, not intentions. And this leads us to another critical aspect: the confusion between self-esteem and competence. Self-esteem without competence is narcissism. It's the belief that you're special without having done anything special. It's the conviction that you deserve respect without having earned respect. It's the illusion that your opinions matter without having developed the knowledge base that would make them relevant. And we live in a world full of incompetent narcissists who believe their voice should be heard simply because they have one. The democratization of public discourse through the internet turned every person with access to a keyboard into a self-proclaimed expert on everything. And no one has the mental filter to distinguish between someone who really knows what they're talking about and someone who's just opining from confident ignorance. The workplace reflects all this. Employers constantly complain about the new generation of workers. They can't receive criticism without taking it personally. They can't work without constant supervision. They can't commit to long-term projects. They need continuous validation. They expect promotions without having demonstrated competence. They quit at the first obstacle. And when they're fired, or when they don't get the job they want, they don't ask what they did wrong. They blame the system, discrimination, bad luck. It's never their responsibility. It's always something external. And companies, instead of maintaining standards, adapt to fragility. They create wellness programs, hire life coaches, implement mental health day policies, build decompression spaces, all designed to make work less stressful, less demanding, less real. But work is stressful. Life is demanding. Reality is harsh. And instead of preparing people for that, we keep building thicker cushions. And each new cushion makes people weaker, not stronger. Here's the truth no one wants to hear. Stress is not the enemy. Chronic stress without purpose is but acute stress. The stress that comes from pursuing something meaningful, from facing real challenges. That stress is what builds resilience. That stress is what forges character. That stress is what separates those who achieve things from those who only talk about achieving them. But we've pathologized all stress. We've turned a fundamental evolutionary response into a symptom of disease. And then we wonder why no one can handle pressure. Language also changed. And language matters because it shapes how we think. Now, everything is trauma. An unpleasant comment is traumatic. A bad grade is traumatic. A romantic rejection is traumatic. We've diluted the meaning of that word to the point where it means nothing. Real trauma exists. Real trauma is debilitating. But not everything bad that happens to you is trauma. Sometimes it's just an unpleasant experience. Sometimes it's just part of living. And when you call everything trauma, you lose the ability to distinguish between what really requires intervention and what simply requires you to move forward. The same with mental health. Mental health is important. Mental disorders are real. But not all emotional discomfort is a mental disorder. Not all sadness is clinical depression. Not all worry is an anxiety disorder. Sometimes you're sad because something bad happened. Sometimes you're anxious because you have an important challenge ahead. Those are normal and healthy emotional responses. But we've medicalized normal emotions to the point where people believe they need therapy to process anything that isn't constant happiness. And that creates dependency. It creates the belief that you can't handle your own emotions without professional intervention. that you don't have the internal tools to process life. And yes, there are people who need professional help. There are people with legitimate disorders that require treatment. But we're creating a culture where seeking help has become the first resort instead of the last. Where instead of developing our own coping mechanisms, we externalize emotional processing. And that doesn't build resilience, it builds dependency. It creates people who collapse without their therapist, without their medication, without their external support system, because they never developed the internal muscle. The Stoics understood this over 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote that it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from distinguishing between what we can control and what we can't. Seneca spoke about preparing for adversity by mentally rehearsing it before it arrives. These are not new ideas. They're ancient truths that each generation has to rediscover. But we decided to ignore them. We decided the Stoics were emotional repressors, that mental preparation was toxic, that anticipating the negative was pessimism. And in our attempt to be more positive, more emotionally open, more authentic, we became more fragile. Because here's what the ancients knew, and we forgot. You can't control what life throws at you. You can only control how you respond. And if you never practice responding well, if you never develop that capacity, then life will control you instead of the other way around. The Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, visualizing the worst that could happen and how you would handle it, is not pessimism. It's preparation. It's mental inoculation against the shock of the unexpected. But in our modern culture, that's considered negative thinking. We're supposed to only visualize success, only think positively, only affirm that everything will turn out well. And then when it doesn't turn out well, we have no tools to handle it. The paradox of happiness is real. The more you pursue it directly, the more it escapes. Happiness is a byproduct of living well, of doing meaningful things, of overcoming real challenges. It's not a state you can achieve by eliminating everything negative from your life. In fact, eliminating the negative leaves you empty. It leaves you without purpose. Because purpose comes from struggling for something that matters. And if nothing matters enough to suffer for it, then nothing really matters. Viktor Frankl survived the Nazi concentration camps and emerged from that experience with a deep understanding of human psychology. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, argues that the most fundamental human need is not happiness, it's meaning. And meaning doesn't come from comfort, it comes from overcoming suffering. It comes from choosing your response to circumstances you can't control. Those who survived the camps were not necessarily the physically strongest. They were those who had a why to live for. They had something bigger than themselves that gave them reason to endure. And what do we have? We have comfort. We have infinite entertainment. We have access to more information and more options than any generation in history. And yet, we're more depressed, more anxious, more lost than ever, because all that abundance means nothing without meaning. And meaning is not found in the easy, it's forged in the difficult. It's found when you choose something worth suffering for and pursue it regardless of the cost. But we've raised generations that avoid suffering at all costs, and in doing so, they've also avoided meaning. Nietzsche said that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how, but if you don't have a why, then any how is unbearable. And that's the trap of comfort. It takes away your why. When everything is easy, when there's nothing to fight for, life loses meaning. And a meaningless life is unbearable, no matter how comfortable it is. That's why we see rates of depression and anxiety skyrocketing in rich, comfortable societies. It's not despite comfort, it's because of it. The human brain didn't evolve for comfort. It evolved for survival. And survival requires being alert, requires facing threats, requires solving problems. When you eliminate those elements, the brain doesn't find peace, it finds boredom. And existential boredom is torture. That's why people desperately seek distractions. That's why they can't be 5 minutes alone with their thoughts without grabbing their phone. That's why they need constant stimulation. Because in the absence of real challenges, the brain atrophies. It becomes restless. It becomes anxious for no apparent reason. Because it's designed to face real threats. And when there are none, it starts inventing them. And here's what's truly ironic. In our attempt to eliminate all dangers from modern life, we've created the biggest danger of all. A population incapable of functioning, incapable of thinking critically, incapable of resisting adversity, incapable of building something that lasts. We've created a society of perpetual consumers who need constant entertainment, constant validation, constant comfort. And each new need makes them more dependent, more controllable, weaker, because that's the final truth no one wants to admit. Fragility is not just an individual problem, it's a political problem. A fragile population is an easily controlled population. People who can't handle discomfort can't resist manipulation. People who need constant validation are easy to direct simply by giving or withholding that validation. People who have been trained to avoid conflict can't defend principles when those principles are attacked. People who collapse at criticism can't hold unpopular positions even when those positions are correct. Authoritarian regimes know this. That's why their strategy always includes controlling education, controlling language, creating economic and emotional dependency. Because once you control those things, you control people. And you don't need force, people control themselves. They self-censor, they conform, they surrender. All to avoid the pain of disagreeing, of being excluded, of facing consequences. And before you think I'm exaggerating, look around you. Look at how many people don't say what they really think for fear of social consequences. Look at how many people support ideas they don't agree with just because it's easier than resisting. Look at how many people have given up thinking for themselves and simply repeat whatever is fashionable in their particular tribe. That's not freedom. That's voluntary slavery. And it's the direct result of raising people without backbone. Taleb's anti-fragile is not just an interesting concept, it's a survival instruction. Systems that benefit from chaos, that strengthen with adversity, are the ones that endure. Systems that require perfect conditions to function are the first to collapse when those conditions change. And conditions always change. History is an endless succession of crises, collapses, wars, pandemics, disasters. It's not the exception, it's the rule. Periods of stability are historical anomalies. And we've raised entire generations during one of those anomalies, convincing them that stability is permanent, that comfort is guaranteed, that progress is linear and inevitable. None of that is true. Stability is temporary. Comfort is fragile. Progress can be reversed in a matter of years. And when that happens, and it will happen because it always happens, what will happen to a generation that can't handle being given a low grade? What will happen when they face real scarcity, real threat, real pain? They're not going to thrive. They're not even going to survive functionally. They're going to collapse. They're going to desperately seek someone who promises to restore comfort, regardless of the price. And that's the most dangerous moment, because that's when people voluntarily give up their freedom in exchange for security. Benjamin Franklin said it almost 300 years ago. Those who give up essential liberty to purchase temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. But they will. They're doing it because they weren't prepared to value freedom more than comfort. They were prepared to prioritize their feelings above everything else. And feelings are manipulable. Feelings are controllable. Feelings change with the wind. So what do? How do we reverse this? Because although everything I've said sounds hopeless, it's not. It's a warning, yes, but it's also an instruction manual. Because once you understand how we became fragile, you can start building anti-fragile. And that starts with you. You can't change the educational system tomorrow. You can't rewrite parenting culture overnight. But you can change how you relate to discomfort. You can start seeking friction instead of avoiding it. You can start seeing challenges as opportunities to strengthen yourself instead of threats to avoid. Start small. Do things that make you uncomfortable. Have difficult conversations. Accept criticism without immediately defending yourself. Fail at something public and observe how it doesn't destroy you. Face rejection deliberately. Spend time in silence without distractions. Exercise until it hurts. Fast. Voluntarily. Expose yourself to cold. All of these are ways to train mental and emotional endurance. They're ways to remind your nervous system that it can handle more than it thinks. And if you have children, or plan to have them, or work with young people, let them fail. Let them feel frustration. Let them face consequences. Don't rescue. Don't soften. Don't eliminate all obstacles from their path. Because every time you do, you rob them of the opportunity to discover they're stronger than they think. You rob them of the opportunity to develop real confidence based on real competence. You rob them of the opportunity to become functional adults. This is not cruelty, it's love. Real love prepares people for reality. It doesn't create comfortable illusions that collapse at first contact with the world. Real love is tough when necessary. It sets standards, it maintains expectations, it allows consequences. Because those are the things that build character. And character is the only thing that carries you through the difficult parts of life. Talent takes you far, intelligence takes you further, but character is what determines if you make it to the end. And finally, accept that we live in a time of transition. The structures that created this fragility are collapsing under their own weight. They can't sustain themselves because they're not built on anything real. They're built on illusions, on comfortable lies, on collective denial of fundamental realities. And when illusions clash with reality, reality always wins. Always. What's coming will be difficult. But difficult is not bad. Difficult is where people grow. Difficult is where those with substance are separated from those with only appearance. And if you prepare now, if you start building anti-fragile now, you'll be on the side of those who thrive when the world finally stops pretending eternal comfort is possible. Because it's not, it never was. And the sooner we accept that, the sooner we stop fleeing from the inevitable and start preparing for it, the better off we'll be. The future belongs to the strong. Not strong in the necessarily physical sense, but strong in the sense of capable of enduring, capable of adapting, capable of moving forward when everything gets difficult. And that is built. You're not born with it. You forge it through thousands of small decisions not to take the easy path, not to seek the comfortable exit, not to give up when it hurts. That's all. It's not complex, it's simple. But simple doesn't mean easy, and that's exactly the reason why most will never do it. That's all. It's not complex, it's simple. But simple doesn't mean easy. And that's exactly the reason why most will never do it. Because here's the part that really hurts. Most people prefer comfortable illusion to uncomfortable truth. They prefer to believe the world owes them something rather than accept it owes them nothing. They prefer to blame the system rather than look in the mirror. And that's their choice. But it has consequences, and those consequences are not abstract. They're concrete, measurable, devastating. Look at mental health statistics. Look at depression rates in young people. Look at the exponential increase in anxiety diagnoses. Look at the number of 25-year-old adults who can't maintain a job, a relationship, or a commitment of more than 6 months. Look at the loneliness epidemic. Look at the collapse of traditional social structures. None of this is accidental. It's all the direct result of the decisions we made as a society. And before you think this is just a Western problem, it's not. It's being exported. Globalization doesn't just export technology and pop culture, it exports life philosophies. And the philosophy of fragility is spreading to every corner of the planet where internet reaches. Cultures that for millennia trained their youth to be resilient are now adopting the Western model of overprotection. And the results are the same. Fragility, dependency, collapse in the face of adversity. It's like a cultural virus, and it spreads faster than any physical pandemic because there's no vaccine against bad ideas. There's only exposure to better ideas. And better ideas require people to think, and thinking is uncomfortable. Let's talk about relationships, because that's where fragility manifests most visibly and most destructively. Relationships require friction. They require disagreement. They require two people with different perspectives to find ways to coexist without either completely sacrificing their identity. That's difficult. That requires honest communication, and honest communication is uncomfortable. It requires saying things the other doesn't want to hear. It requires hearing things you don't want to hear. It requires compromise, not in the sense of giving in, but in the sense of finding solutions that work for both, even though neither gets exactly what they want. But the fragile generation can't do that. The moment something gets uncomfortable, they flee. They end the relationship. They block. They ghost. Because they never learned that lasting relationships are not those that never have conflict, they're those that survive conflict. They're those that strengthen through conflict. But that requires staying when you want to leave. It requires continuing to talk when you want to shut up. It requires being vulnerable even when it's terrifying. And fragility and vulnerability are not the same thing. Vulnerability is strength. It's choosing to be open, knowing you could be hurt. Fragility is collapsing when you're hurt, because you never developed the capacity to process pain. And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. I'm talking about friendships. I'm talking about family relationships. I'm talking about work relationships. All require the ability to handle disagreement, criticism, disappointment. And if you can't handle those things, you end up alone. You end up surrounded by people who never challenge you, because anyone who does is eliminated from your life. And that's not protection, it's isolation. It's building an echo chamber where everyone agrees with you all the time. And that's not community, it's a cult of one. Modern loneliness is not because people are physically alone. It's because they're emotionally isolated. They have hundreds of superficial connections on social media, but none deep in real life. Because deep connections require time, effort, real vulnerability. They require showing yourself without filters. They require letting someone see your worst moments, not just the Instagram-worthy moments. And that terrifies people, because they've been trained to believe they're only valuable when they're perfect, when they're happy, when they have everything under control. So they pretend. They pretend online. They pretend in person. They pretend until they no longer know who they really are beneath all the masks. And here's the saddest part. People long for authenticity while doing everything possible to avoid it. They want real connections, but aren't willing to do the work that real connections require. They want to be loved for who they really are, but never show who they really are. They want intimacy without vulnerability. They want depth without effort. They want the benefits without the costs. And life doesn't work that way. It never has worked that way. And it will never work that way no matter how much we wish it. Brené Brown talks a lot about vulnerability. And she's right about many things. But there's a nuance that's often lost. Vulnerability without boundaries is not bravery, it's recklessness. Being vulnerable with people who haven't earned it is not authenticity, it's self-destruction. The real skill is knowing with whom to be vulnerable and when. It's knowing how to distinguish between someone who's going to use your vulnerability as a weapon and someone who's going to honor it as the gift it is. And that distinction requires judgment. It requires experience. It requires having been hurt before and having learned from it instead of just traumatizing yourself. But if you're never allowed to fail, if you're never allowed to be hurt, you never develop that judgment. You never learn to read people. You never learn to protect yourself in the ways that matter. So you end up being vulnerable with everyone or with no one. And both extremes are destructive. Being vulnerable with everyone leaves you exposed to manipulation. Being vulnerable with no one leaves you isolated. The middle ground, the wise discrimination about when to open up and when to close off, that only comes from experience. And experience requires risk. It requires failing. It requires being hurt and learning from it. Let's talk about work. Because the workplace is where fragility most brutally clashes with reality. Work doesn't care about your feelings. Work has goals. Work has deadlines. Work has standards. And if you don't meet them, there are consequences. You can't cry until they change the expectations. You can't accuse the boss of trauma because they gave you negative feedback. You can't quit every time something gets difficult and expect to build a career. But that's exactly what we see. People who change jobs every 6 months because the environment wasn't perfect, because the boss was demanding, because coworkers weren't nice enough. And look, there are toxic jobs. There are abusive bosses. There are environments that really are destructive. I'm not saying you should stay in genuinely harmful situations. I'm saying you've lost the ability to distinguish between normal difficulty and real abuse. Between a boss who's demanding because they want you to grow, and a boss who's cruel because they enjoy power. Between a job that challenges you and a job that destroys you. And when you can't distinguish, you end up treating everything as if it were the same. You end up quitting real opportunities because they require effort. You end up confusing growth with abuse. Growth hurts. Period. There's no way to expand your capacity without pushing your limits. And pushing your limits is uncomfortable. It's stressful. It's difficult. But it's not trauma. It's development. And if you flee every time you feel that discomfort, you never grow. You stay exactly where you are. And then 5 years later, you wonder why you haven't progressed while everyone else who started with you is 3 levels above. The answer is simple. They stayed when it got difficult. You left? And here's the part no one tells you about successful careers. They're all built on a mountain of invisible failures. Every successful person you admire has failed more times than you've tried. The difference is they didn't let failure stop them. They used it as information. They adjusted. They tried again, and again, and again, until it worked. That's the formula. There's no magic secret. There's no shortcut. It's brutal persistence combined with constant adjustment. But brutal persistence requires that you can bear the pain of failing without collapsing. And that's exactly what the fragile generation can't do. So they flee to entrepreneurship thinking they'll have more freedom there, more control, less demands. And they quickly discover that entrepreneurship is 10 times harder than any traditional job. Because now you're not only responsible for your own performance, you're responsible for everything. Every decision is yours. Every mistake is yours. Every consequence falls directly on you. There's no one to blame. There's no system to protect you. It's you against the market. And the market has no mercy. The market doesn't care if you tried hard. It only cares if you delivered value. And if you didn't, you die. That simple. But here's what's interesting. Entrepreneurship is also the best school for developing anti-fragile, because it forces you to face direct and immediate consequences. It forces you to learn, fast or fail completely. There's no safety net. There are no pauses to process your emotions. The market moves, and either you move with it or it crushes you. And those who survive, those who really make it, come out of that experience transformed. They come out stronger, more capable, more resilient, because they were forged in fire. And fire doesn't ask if you're ready. Fire only burns, and either you harden or you're consumed. Naval Ravikant says you should aim to do things where the downside risk is low, but the upside potential is unlimited, and he's right. But he also says you should be willing to fail publicly, because fear of public judgment is what stops most people from trying big things. They have ideas, they have capacity, but the fear of others seeing them fail paralyzes them. And so years pass, decades, entire lives without ever trying anything significant because the perceived cost of public failure is too high. But here's the brutal truth. No one is paying as much attention as you think. Everyone is too busy worrying about their own failures. And the few who do pay attention and mock, those are exactly the people whose opinion shouldn't matter to you. Because people who are building something don't have time to mock others. People who criticize from the stands are never in the game. And the opinions of people who aren't in the game are worth nothing, less than nothing. They're noise. And noise only has the power you give it. Jeff Bezos has a concept called one-way door versus two-way door decisions. One-way door decisions are irreversible. Once you make them, you can't go back. Those require careful analysis. Two-way door decisions are reversible. If they don't work, you can go back. And most decisions are two-way doors. But people treat them as if they were one-way doors. They paralyze, they overthink, they wait for certainty that never comes, and so they never act. Action cures fear. Inaction amplifies it. The more time you spend thinking about doing something without doing it, the bigger the fear becomes in your mind. The more reasons you find not to do it, the more catastrophic scenarios you imagine. And eventually the fear is so big that action seems impossible. But if you simply act, if you take the first step no matter how small, something changes. Fear doesn't disappear, but it becomes manageable. Because now you're in motion, and physics is clear. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. Inertia is your enemy. Inertia is what keeps you trapped in jobs you hate, in relationships that don't serve you, in cities where you don't want to be. Inertia is comfortable. Inertia is familiar, and the human brain is designed to prefer the familiar over the unknown, even when the familiar is miserable, because at least it's predictable. At least you know what to expect. The unknown could be better, but it could also be worse. And for the primitive brain, that risk isn't worth it. Better to stay with the known pain than risk the unknown pain. But that's a trap, because the known pain doesn't go away. It accumulates, it deepens, it becomes unbearable. And eventually you reach a breaking point where the pain of staying becomes greater than the fear of change. That's when people finally act, when they have no choice, when the present pain is so intense that anything is better than this. But by then, you've lost years, you've lost opportunities, you've lost momentum. And now you have to act from a place of desperation instead of from a place of strength. The smart way is to act before reaching that point. It's recognizing when something isn't working and changing it while you still have options, while you still have energy, while you still have momentum. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. But that requires brutal honesty with yourself. It requires admitting when you were wrong. It requires accepting that the investment you made in this direction was a sunk cost, and that continuing to invest in that direction just because you already invested is fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy destroys more lives than almost any other thinking error, because people prefer to double down on a mistake rather than admit they were wrong. The ego is the enemy. Ryan Holiday wrote an entire book about this, and he's right. Ego blinds you. Ego makes you think you're more special than you are. Ego prevents you from learning because it believes it already knows everything. Ego prevents you from asking for help because that would be admitting weakness. Ego makes you make stupid decisions because it needs to prove something instead of simply doing what works. And ego is especially dangerous in the social media era, where you can build a public image that has nothing to do with your private reality. You can appear successful while collapsing internally. And many people do, because ego needs to maintain the image even when that image is a lie. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It's recognizing you're not the center of the universe, that your problems are not unique, that your pain is not special, that thousands of people have faced exactly what you're facing and have come out the other side. And if they could, you can. But that requires letting go of the narrative that you're a special victim of unique circumstances. It requires accepting that you're responsible for your life, no matter what has happened to you. Because although you can't control what happens to you, you can control how you respond. And your response is the only thing that determines your destiny. Viktor Frankl again. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is your power to choose your response. In your response lies your growth and your freedom. That space is where the difference between being reactive and being proactive lies. Between being a victim of circumstances and being a creator of your reality. But most people live completely in reactive mode. Something happens, they react. Someone says something, they react. The world pushes them, and they move in the direction of the push. There's no pause, there's no reflection, There's no conscious choice, only automatic reaction. And so they lose their agency. They become leaves in the wind, moved by external forces, without their own direction. Developing that space between stimulus and response is one of the most important skills you can build. And it's built through practice, through meditation, through deliberate reflection, through exposing yourself to difficult situations and practicing not reacting immediately, practicing pausing, practicing observing your impulse without acting on it, practicing choosing your response instead of being swept away by the first emotion that arises. This is not suppressing emotions. It's regulating emotions. It's owning your emotions instead of them owning you. And here's the secret no one tells you. Emotions are not mandates. They're information. Feeling anger doesn't mean you have to act with anger. Feeling fear doesn't mean you have to flee. Feeling sadness doesn't mean you have to collapse. Emotions are telling you something about your perception of the situation. But your perception could be wrong. It could be distorted by past experiences, by limiting beliefs, by incorrect interpretations. So the emotion you feel might not be appropriate for the actual situation. And if you automatically act on that emotion, you're probably going to regret it. Emotional intelligence is not being more emotional. It's being smarter about emotions. It's recognizing them, naming them, understanding them, and then deciding what to do with them. Sometimes the right response is to express them. Sometimes it's to process them privately. Sometimes it's to ignore them because they're not useful right now. But the key is that you decide, not them. And that's the difference between emotional maturity and emotional infantilism. Children are slaves to their emotions. Adults are masters of them. But we've raised generations that remain emotionally infantile into their 30s, their 40s, beyond. Because no one ever demanded they grow up. No one ever told them it's okay to feel something and not act on it. That you can be angry and not yell. That you can be sad and not collapse. That you can be anxious and still act. In fact, acting while you have fear is the definition of courage. Courage is not absence of fear. It's action despite fear. And if you wait to not have fear to act, you'll never act. Because fear never completely disappears. It transforms. It reduces. It becomes manageable. But it's always there at some level. And that's okay. Fear is useful information. It tells you something matters, that there's risk, that you should pay attention. But it shouldn't stop you. It should focus you. High-performance athletes understand this. They use the adrenaline of fear to sharpen their focus. They use pressure to elevate their performance. They don't try to eliminate pressure. They learn to thrive under it. And that's exactly the opposite of what we teach now. Now we teach that pressure is toxic, that stress is harmful, that you should avoid any situation that activates your nervous system. And so we create people who collapse at the first sign of pressure. People who need perfectly controlled environments to function. People who are completely useless in crisis. And crises come. They always come. The economy collapses. Pandemics emerge. Natural disasters strike. Wars break out. And when they come, people who were trained to avoid stress don't survive well. People who were trained to handle stress, to use stress, to transform stress into fuel, those people thrive. Those people become leaders. Those people rebuild. Those people survive and then help others survive. And this is not theory, it's documented history. Every civilization that became too comfortable, too soft, too weak, was conquered by harder civilizations. The Romans at their peak were brutal warriors forged by centuries of constant conflict. The late Romans were soft hedonists who hired barbarians to fight their wars. Guess what happened? The barbarians realized they were stronger and simply took control. That's human history on loop. Hard times create strong people. Strong people create easy times. Easy times create weak people. Weak people create hard times. And the cycle repeats. We're in the phase of weak people creating hard times. What's coming won't be comfortable, but it will be necessary. Because reality eventually corrects illusions. Eventually, the price of fragility becomes too high and the system collapses under its own weight. And from collapse emerges something new, hopefully something stronger, something more honest, something more connected to fundamental realities instead of comfortable ideologies. But that depends on the decisions we make now, on whether we choose to strengthen ourselves voluntarily or wait for life to force us, on whether we choose uncomfortable truth or comfortable lie, on whether we choose to be adults or remain eternal children waiting for someone else to solve our problems. No one is coming to save you. That's the most liberating and most terrifying truth at the same time. No one is going to fix your life. No one is going to give you what you want. No one is going to do the hard work for you. Either you do it or it doesn't get done. And you can spend your whole life waiting, blaming, justifying why it's not your responsibility. And in the end, you'll die with all your excuses intact and nothing else. Or you can accept that it's completely your responsibility, even when it's not your fault. That although the world is unfair, although you had bad luck, although others had it easier, your life is still your responsibility. And once you fully accept that, once you stop waiting for justice or fairness or ease, something gets liberated. And you can start truly building, because building requires accepting reality as it is, not as you wish it were. It requires working with the materials you have, not lamenting the materials you don't have. It requires starting where you are, not where you should be. And that's what most can't do. They're trapped in the gap between where they are and where they feel they should be. And that gap paralyzes them, fills them with resentment, makes them feel like victims. But the gap is only perception. Reality is where you are now. And the only thing you can do with that is work from there forward. There's no shortcut. There's no reset button. There's only hard work, constant, often unglamorous, frequently frustrating, but absolutely necessary. And if you do that work, if you do it for long enough without giving up, something interesting happens. You become competent, and competence generates real confidence, not the false confidence that comes from participation trophies or empty affirmations, but the deep confidence that comes from knowing you can do difficult things, that you can solve problems, that you can handle adversity. That confidence is unmovable. No one can take it from you because it's not based on opinions, it's based on evidence. You've done things, you've overcome obstacles, you've proven to yourself more than anyone that you're capable. And once you have that, life changes. Because you no longer move with fear, you move with certainty. Certainty that whatever happens, you'll handle it. Because you always have. That's anti-fragile. That's the opposite of what we've built. And that's what we need to recover. Not through massive systemic changes, although those would help, but through individual choices, through small daily decisions not to take the easy path, not to seek external validation, not to flee from discomfort, to make the difficult call, to have the honest conversation, to admit when you're wrong, to ask for help when you need it, to offer help when you can, to build something that matters, to stand for something worthwhile, to be someone others can rely on. Not because you're perfect, but because you're consistent. Because you do what you say you'll do. Because you don't collapse when things get difficult. And in the end, that's the only thing that really matters. Not how many followers you have, not how much money you make, not how impressive your life looks from the outside, but whether you can look at yourself in the mirror and respect the person you see. Whether you can sleep peacefully knowing you did the best you could with what you had. Whether you can honestly say you didn't run when it was difficult, that you didn't lie when it was convenient, that you didn't betray your values when it was profitable. That's integrity. And integrity is the only thing no one can take from you except yourself. It's your last line of defense against a world that constantly pushes you to compromise, to give in, to sell yourself for comfort or acceptance. Don't give in. It's not worth it. Because what you temporarily gain in comfort, you permanently lose in self-respect. And without self-respect, you have nothing. You can have all the external success in the world and still feel empty. You can have all the external validation and still not believe in yourself. Because you know the truth. You know who you are when no one is watching. You know if you're living according to your own standards or just pretending for the audience. And that truth can't be hidden from yourself no matter how much you try. So live in a way you can respect. Build a life worth defending. Become someone you'd like to meet. And do it knowing the path will be difficult. Knowing there will be moments where you want to give up. Knowing most won't understand why you don't take shortcuts. Knowing you'll be criticized, misunderstood, maybe even rejected. But do it anyway. Because in the end, the only thing you take with you is who you became in the process. And that's the only thing that really matters.